Elaine had always believed the rumors about the old Lancaster Hotel were just tales spun to entertain tourists until she started working there. Nestled on the edge of a cliff overlooking the tempestuous North Sea, the Lancaster had a storied past filled with tragic accidents, unexplained disappearances, and ghostly sightings. When she got the job as a night manager, Elaine thought her biggest challenges would be unruly guests and the occasional plumbing breakdown. She was sorely mistaken. It started her first night on the job. Their hotel was unusually quiet, with only a handful of guests checked in, most of them storm chasers eager to witness the legendary Lancaster squalls from the safety of their rooms. Elaine's shift began smoothly enough, but as midnight approached, the wind outside rose to a howl, and the hotel seemed to creak and groan with a life of its own. Walking her rounds, Elaine felt the weight of the silence pressing down on her. Each step echoed through the empty corridors, the antique carpets doing little to muffle the sound. As she passed by room 307, a chill ran down her spine. That room hadn't been booked tonight, she was sure of it. Yet, under the door, a sliver of light flickered, like candlelight dancing to an unseen breeze. Elaine paused, her hand hovering over the doorknob. The rational part of her mind urged her to move on. There had to be a logical explanation. Maybe one of the staff had gone in to do some late cleaning and left the light on. But another part, the part awakened by the eerie atmosphere of the Lancaster, wanted to open the door, to look inside. Gathering her courage, she turned the knob slowly. The door creaked open, revealing a room bathed in shadows, with no sign of a candle or any other source of light. Just as she was about to step inside, she heard it, a whisper, so faint she thought she might have imagined it. "Help me," the voice was a mere breath, yet it seemed to envelop her, echoing around the room and down the hall. Elaine snapped her head around, searching the shadows, but saw no one. The room was empty, the furniture covered in sheets, undisturbed dust on the surfaces. Heart pounding, Elaine quickly stepped back and closed the door. She reported the incident over her walkie-talkie to Frank, the old security guard who had worked at the hotel for decades. His crackling voice came back, tinged with concern. "Stay away from that room, Elaine. It's best left alone." "What do you mean?" Elaine pressed, her voice low. "There's histories in this hotel that are best not disturbed. Room 307's one of them. Just finish your rounds and keep clear of it," Frank advised sternly. Elaine, though shaken, decided to heed Frank's warning. She continued her rounds, but the sense of unease grew with every step. As she made her way through the dimly lit hallways, the lights began to flicker, a cold draft swept through the corridors, and the whisper returned, now a chorus of indistinct voices, murmuring just beneath the howl of the wind outside. The furniture was appended, the bedding torn and scattered across the floor as if a great struggle had taken place. But more disturbing was the water, seawater, judging by the smell that pooled on the floor, soaking into the carpet with an insidious sleep. Elaine's heart pounded in her chest as she stepped back, reaching for her walkie-talkie to call Frank, the security guard. Before she could press the button, a low, guttural moan filled the room, echoing off the walls with a sorrowful lament. The temperature dropped further, her breath visible in the air, as she spun around, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The light flickered, then steadied, revealing the figure of an old man in a sailor's coat standing by the window. His face was weathered, his eyes hollow, looking out at the raging storm with an expression of deep longing. "Who are you?" Elaine's voice was barely above a whisper, her body tense and ready to flee. The figure turned slowly, his gaze meeting hers, a deep sadness etched into the creases of his face. "I've come home," he murmured, his voice a rasping echo of human speech. "But she's not here," she promised to wait. Elaine, connecting the dots with a chilling realization, understood that the spirit must be linked to Marilyn's fiancé, the sailor who never returned. This revelation did not ease her fear, but it filled her with a profound sympathy for the ghostly figure before her. Determined to understand the forces at play, Elaine set up a night where she would sleep in room 214, armed with recording equipment, hoping to capture any anomalies. That night, as the clock chimed 3, the witching hour, the temperature in the room plummeted, and her breath fogged in the air. Her recording devices flickered as if drained by the cold, and then, from the dark corner of the room, a soft, mournful weeping filled the space. Elaine sat up in bed, her heart pounding, and spoke softly into the darkness. "I'm here to help you. Please tell me what you need." The crying ceased immediately, replaced by a cold silence that seemed to press against Elaine's ears. Then a small voice, barely more than a whisper, responded, "My baby, I can't find my baby." The voice was so filled with sorrow that Elaine's own eyes welled with tears. It was a mother's grief, raw and endless. Elaine spent the rest of the night in the room, speaking gently into the darkness, offering comfort to a spirit she could not see, but whose presence was palpable. In the weeks that followed, Elaine worked tirelessly to uncover the identity of the grieving mother. She dug deeper into the hotel's archives and discovered a tragic story from the early 1900s. A young woman named Isabel had stayed in the hotel during its grand heydays, only to lose her infant to a sudden illness. The records indicated that Isabel had never left the hotel, her death recorded merely weeks after her child's demise. With this new information, Elaine sought the help of a local medium, a woman known for her sensitivity to the spirit world. Together, they held a séance in room 214, reaching out to Isabel with the knowledge of her child's fate, reassuring her that her baby was no longer suffering. The séance was emotionally charged, with lights flickering, the air swirling with cold drafts, and the medium speaking in a voice not her own. She relayed messages of love and reassurance from Isabel, who expressed her deep loneliness and her yearning to be reunited with her child. As the séance concluded, a sense of peace settled over the room, the air warming and the oppressive atmosphere lifting. Elaine felt a profound relief, believing that Isabel's spirit had found the closure she needed to move on. However, the peace was short-lived. Just days later, the disturbances began anew, with greater intensity. Objects flew across rooms, mirrors cracked without contact, and guests reported seeing the apparition of a woman roaming the hallways, her face twisted in anguish. It became clear to Elaine that whatever entity they had communicated with during the séance was not Isabel, or at least not her alone. The hotel harbored deeper, darker spirits, awakened by their attempts to cleanse and quiet the hauntings. Elaine realized that she was dealing with something far beyond her understanding, a nexus of spiritual energy that the Lancaster Hotel had accumulated over its many years. Each attempt to intervene seemed only to peel back another layer of the hotel's haunted legacy, revealing more pain and unrest. Determined to protect her guests and to uncover the full extent of the hauntings, Elaine decided to delve deeper into the history of the Lancaster, to identify every spirit, every tragic tale, in hopes of finally bringing peace to the troubled site. As she prepared for this monumental task, the hotel seemed to watch her, the shadows deepening, the whispers growing louder, as if the building itself was bracing for the revelations to come. Elaine knew she needed more help. The task at hand was beyond anything she could handle alone, and the increasing paranormal activities at the Lancaster Hotel were becoming too dangerous to ignore. With the history of the hotel sprawling before her like a complex web of sorrow and unrest, she decided to reach out to a renowned paranormal expert, Dr. Simon Clark, whose work with haunted locations had earned him significant acclaim. Dr. Clark arrived on a gusty November evening, his presence bringing a sense of urgency and seriousness to the unfolding events. He was a tall man, with sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing and a calm demeanor that made him appear unshakable. Elaine led him on a tour of the hotel, explaining the various hotspots of activity and the history behind each occurrence. As they walked through the dimly lit hallways, Dr. Clark set up sophisticated equipment designed to monitor electromagnetic fields, capture EVPs, and record any visual anomalies. They focused particularly on room 214, where Elaine had communicated with the supposed spirit of Isabel, and room 307, which seemed to be a central node of unexplained phenomena. That night, they conducted a vigil in room 307, sitting in the darkness surrounded by blinking monitors and whirring cameras. The air grew chillier as the night deepened, and a tense silence enveloped the room. Suddenly, the temperature dropped sharply, and a dense mist appeared out of nowhere, filling the room with a cold dampness. Dr. Clark remained composed, his eyes fixed on the equipment as the readings went off the charts. "There's a significant presence here," he whispered, his voice recorder capturing every word. "Can you tell us your name?" he asked into the darkness. The response came as a sudden spike in the electromagnetic fields, followed by a low, mournful moan that reverberated around the room. The sound was so clear, so filled with sorrow, that even Dr. Clark looked momentarily shaken. "This is not just residual energy," he murmured, more to himself than to Elaine. "This is a conscious entity, possibly more than one, trapped here by some form of emotional or psychic trauma." As they continued the vigil, the phenomena intensified. Shadows flickered at the edges of their vision, and the sound of distant whispers filled the room. Elaine felt a growing sense of dread, a feeling that they were being surrounded by unseen eyes, watching their every move. Hours passed, and the activity seemed to reach a crescendo when a loud crash echoed through the room. They turned to see that a chair had been hurled across the space by an invisible force, smashing against the wall with such violence that it splintered into pieces. "We need to proceed with caution," Dr. Clark advised, his calm voice a stark contrast to the chaos around them. "Whatever is here, it's powerful and potentially very dangerous." Elaine nodded, her resolve strengthened by his presence. They decided to regroup and review the recordings to see if they could identify the spirits and possibly ascertain what they wanted. Over the next few days, they analyzed hours of audio and video recordings. The EVP sessions revealed multiple voices, some confused and lost, others angry and resentful. One voice, in particular, stood out, a deep, male voice that repeatedly said, "Unfinished," a clue that perhaps these spirits were tied to unresolved issues or unfulfilled desires from their lifetimes. Armed with this new information, Elaine and Dr. Clark planned a series of targeted seances aimed at contacting these specific spirits to understand their stories and help them find peace. Each session would be held in the areas of highest activity, with protections in place to ensure their safety from any harmful forces. Elaine continued her role as the night manager, now with a deeper understanding and respect for the history and spirits of the hotel. The Lancaster had become more than just a place of employment for her. It was a project, a mission to ensure that it was a place of rest, both for the living and the spirits who remained. Her job was indeed a nightmare at times, filled with challenges that went beyond the normal scope of hospitality management. But it was also a profound journey into the mysteries of the past, a journey that had changed her in ways she could never have imagined. As the story of the Lancaster Hotel continued to unfold with each passing night, Elaine knew that her adventures in the paranormal were far from over. The hotel had many more stories to tell, and she was there to listen, to help, and to ensure that peace reigned in the corridors of the Lancaster. Each night, as she walked the halls, she felt not fear, but a keen anticipation of what was yet to come. As months turned into years, Elaine's connection with the Lancaster Hotel deepened, weaving her life into its corridors like the ivy that clung to its old stone walls. The hotel's reputation gradually transformed from a place of hauntings and fear to one of intrigue and historic charm, attracting guests from all over who were eager to experience its unique atmosphere, perhaps even catch a glimpse of the supernatural. Elaine became something of a local celebrity, her stories and experiences documented in blogs, podcasts, and eventually a feature in a prominent travel magazine. But beneath the allure and attention, her initial mission remained steadfast, to help the restless spirits find peace. One chilly autumn evening, as the winds whispered secrets through the Lancaster's drafty halls, Elaine prepared for what she felt would be the final chapter in her journey with the hotel's oldest residents. With Dr. Clark by her side and a small team of trusted paranormal researchers, they planned an overnight vigil to officially close the lingering portals and seal the peace they had fought so hard to achieve. The night began with a calm serenity, unusual for the typically tempestuous seaside weather. Dr. Clark led the team in setting up their equipment in the Grand Ballroom, the heart of the hotel, where most of the spiritual energy seemed to converge. As midnight approached, they gathered in a circle, hands joined, voices mingling in a soft chant designed to strengthen the protective barriers they had placed. Suddenly, the air shifted, growing denser as if the hotel itself was drawing a deep breath. A faint melody, reminiscent of the one Elaine first heard from Jonathan Lancaster's spirit, began to play, echoing through the vast room. It was not threatening, but rather seemed to carry a note of farewell, a requiem for the years of unrest. "Thank you," Elaine spoke into the stillness, her voice steady and clear. "Thank you for sharing your stories with us. It's time to rest now, it's time to let go." The melody swelled, a crescendo of harmonious sounds that filled the ballroom with an ethereal light. Shadows danced along the walls, not with menace but with an almost joyful exuberance, as if the spirits themselves were celebrating their release. One by one, the lights dimmed, the melody faded, and the shadows settled. The team sat in silence, feeling the weight of the moment, the end of an era for the Lancaster Hotel. When the first light of dawn peeked through the curtains, it revealed a room at peace, the morning light casting golden hues across the polished dance floor. In the weeks that followed, the hotel remained quiet. No more mysterious whispers, no more unexplained shadows. Guests reported only comfort and peace, and the staff moved with an ease long forgotten. Elaine knew that their last vigil had been successful, not just in pacifying the spirits, but in healing the wounds of the past. Years later, Elaine decided it was time to move on from the Lancaster Hotel. On her last night, she walked through the empty halls, her footsteps echoing softly. Stopping in the Grand Ballroom, she turned to look at the room one last time. "Goodbye," she whispered. "Be at peace." As she turned to leave, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper floated through the air, a thank you from the spirits she had helped to liberate. A smile touched her lips, a mixture of sadness and satisfaction filling her heart. Elaine left the Lancaster Hotel that night, her legacy a testament to courage and compassion in the face of the unknown. The hotel continued to thrive, a place of historic beauty and peace, its dark past now just a story to be told by the fireside. And while Elaine's job at the Lancaster had indeed been a nightmare at times, it was also a profound journey, a reminder that even in the darkest of places, there is light waiting to be found, if one only dares to look.